Yesterday, I promised that I will talk about how the Soviet Union viewed criminals, more specifically, how it viewed them during the Lenin era and even during the Stalin era. And this view was also spread across many of the satellite states under the Iron Curtain, my country included. And we had actually two books that codified laws when it came to crime, like two penal codes, if you will. One of them dealt with ideological crime, and this is kind of like having political correctness codified into law. Imagine if the Twitter Trust and Safety Council would run your nation. It was kind of like that because Romania didn't have an American-like constitution. There was no free speech, so the government could crack down on literally anything. So political correctness was codified into law, and it was very harshly enforced. And at the same time, the punishment for committing certain acts of ideological nature could have given you more time in prison than actual murder. So it was being dealt with very harshly to the point where the actual crimes, so we're talking about burglary, murder, theft, it's not that they were neglected, but there were so many of them simply because most of the focus of the police was to tackle the ideological crime. So because of the lack of manpower, you had more of the normal type of crime. Now, that wasn't the only reason why the focus was on ideological. There was also the saying that a bad apple can spoil the entire bunch. So the concept of moral contagion existed. In other words, if you have one person that doesn't like the regime, he is going to air his grievances with other people and misinformation will spread. Now, this way of thinking was as old as Lenin. And he actually wrote this when he codified the first penal code that dealt with the criminals from the Gulag. So the Gulag were working camps, usually working prisoners to death. And even there you had the two types of criminals. You had the ones that we have today, murderers, thieves, rapists. And you also had the ones that were ideological in nature, writers, journalists. So Lenin viewed the common criminals to be akin to social allies. And as you can see here, his theories on crime and punishment shaped early Soviet penal system. He implemented policies which favored the common criminal and repressed the political prisoners. So why is it a thing? Why does he consider the common criminal to be social allies while the political dissidents to be counter-revolutionaries and enemies of the state? Well, it's very simple. The common criminal doesn't really bother the person in power. I mean, think about it. The politician isn't really bothered by the fact that you're getting mugged. He's not walking the same streets you are. And even if he is, he has an entourage to protect him. He doesn't have the same amount to lose like you do. I mean, if someone breaks into your house, well, the politician doesn't care. If someone breaks into the politician's house, then maybe he does care. But even then, like, the police will actually start to look for his goods and try to get him back because they will be on high alert. Meanwhile, with you, they don't care. It's like, oh, well, they go in, they take a couple of evidence to pretend that they're doing something, and that's it, right? So the common criminal doesn't really bother the politician, doesn't really bother the establishment. Meanwhile, the counter-revolutionary, they bother the establishment a lot. Because the counter-revolutionary can actually mobilize the public and start protesting and can do things in order to expose the people in power that they're being corrupt. So yeah, from the politician perspective, from Lenin's perspective, the common criminal can be a social ally. I mean, think about it. The government doesn't really have the manpower to suppress an entire population. So it needs allies. And what better ally than a person that's a common criminal? Because the common criminal did something wrong and now he needs to be punished. But what if his punishment can be either made a little bit more easy or can be even forgiven if he just works with the system and channels like the criminal mind in order to suppress the political dissident? And it also gets the people to fight amongst themselves rather than to fight with the elites. Because now the common people are trying to protect themselves from criminals. They're trying to form groups in order to have like neighborhood watches and whatever. So they're more concerned with keeping what they have than looking up at the government and trying to go protest. Like, you can't go protest when you know that your home isn't safe. So that is what Lenin thought, and it actually worked, especially at reducing the costs for gulags, because a lot of the time what they would do is like they would put an actual hardened criminal to be in charge of the other prisoners. So the criminal was still a prisoner of the gulag, but he was able to have more attributes. Like, think about the same way Discord does things. So with Discord, you have the Discord admins, which enforce the TOS, like they're the guards, if you will. But then if I want to make a Discord server, I need to enforce the TOS within my server and ban people who break the TOS from my server, because otherwise the Discord admin shut me down. So even though I'm not a guard, I'm just another user like you and everyone else, I have to ban people and I have to enforce the TOS, because otherwise then the guards crack me down. So technically, I would have power because it's my server, but in reality, Discord still has power over me. And it is the same in the Gulag. One of the more powerful criminals, that like a mobster or something, well, he is given power over other convicts, but he's still a convict himself. So this went even beyond this, because in the decade after the Bolshevik Revolution, the prison administration empowered the criminals in the Gulag by giving them access to the life-saving jobs and goods in the labor camps, while gradually withdrawing the political prisoner access to the same. From the 1930s to shortly after the end of the World War II, the strong criminal fraternity in the Gulag robbed, beat, killed the political prisoners, while the Gulag administration refused to intervene. So in other words, they washed their hands on the problem. Like, he went to prison, oh, well, he just happened to pass away. So the government wasn't exterminating political prisoners. They just happened to not survive the rough conditions of Siberia. I mean, life in the Gulag, despite what people on Twitter try to tell you, wasn't that easy. Some made it, some not. It just happens that the common criminals were more lucky at making it than the political dissidents. Using the testimony of former political prisoners and Gulag personnel, as well as secondary sources, I identified the policies that led to the criminals' reign of terror. I addressed theories regarding if and why the administration permitted such violence and disorder in the camps, and I demonstrated that the political prisoners responded to their situations in a range of ways, from holding their tormentors in contempt to forming a tentative friendship with individual criminals who could offer them protection and a way to survive the camp. So yeah, I mean, you do what you do in such a situation. And again, like, the political prisoners were journalists, activists, other politicians, sometimes even politicians from the Communist Party that Lenin didn't like, or that got a little bit too ambitious. But the point remains that this ideology of separating criminals into two types, and obviously considering the ideological ones to be more dangerous than the ones that are hurting the common people, has remained. And we can see it in action in some more authoritarian nations today. And it is a staple of authoritarianism. It's not necessarily a communist way of thinking or a Marxist way of thinking. It's something that works. Like, if you want to suppress a population, if you want to control a large number of people and you don't have the numbers to make sure that every person is controlled by a guard, that this is one of the ways you can do it. And it's very effective, and Lenin did put it into practice. It worked, and many sociologists took notes of it. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.